And welcome to the Engineers HVAC podcast, where we work to give back to the HVAC community by sharing our HVAC application and design experience. The title of this live episode is Failure is the Option: How Mechanical Engineers in the HVAC Business Can Learn from Failure and Innovate. And we'll get started here in just a few minutes. I'm the marketing guy here at Insight Partners, and we are a manufacturer's rep in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. And thanks for joining us. We'd love to hear where you are from. So if you wouldn't mind commenting in the chat, we'd love to hear what part of the world you're in, what part of the country you're in today. And thank you so much for joining us. So I want to introduce, joining me today, I have Mark Fly with AAON Inc. and Heather Robinson, our brand manager here at Insight. So how are you today, Mark?
I'm doing great, Tony.
Awesome.
Invite me back. So
yeah, man. It's good when you do a show and you get invited back. It's good.
Yeah, sometimes that happens. Every once in a while.
That's great. No, we love having you here, and thanks for joining us. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina, and Mark is in Tulsa today. Is that correct, Mark?
Yeah, I'm in Tulsa today.
Awesome. Yeah, today. Mark travels all over. And Heather Robinson, our brand manager, who's behind the scenes. How are you today, Heather?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're glad you're here. We need all the help we can get, right, Mark?
That's right.
Okay, so we'd love to hear where you guys are from. I see we got David Trinks from Boston. Hello, David. David, I think I owe you a call back now that I see your name there, so I'll give you a call here later today. Joshua, hello from Arizona. Somerset, UK. Wow, we're going international today. Good deal. Lucy Miller from Mississippi. Francisco from Florida. And then we have Cadell, I hope I'm saying that right. Good evening, sir, to you too. And Carlos from Colombia. Okay, we are definitely worldwide today, Mark. So this is pretty exciting. So yeah, I am Tony Mormino. I'm the marketing guy here at Insight Partners. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina, actually in a little city called Marshall. And super excited to be here. We're going to be talking about failure is the option. And there's a little quote here from this guy named Elon. He says, if you're not failing, you're not innovating. It's so true. So Mark's going to share with us his experience in working in the HVAC business for a lot of years and designing and engineering products, which are very complex. And I looked at this prezo a few times, and I'm just so super excited. I love this topic. So hi, Christian from Maryland. Welcome. And we're glad you're here. Hello, Amit. Good to have you here. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. And thank you all, everybody who's joining us. We hope you can hear us and the sound's coming through okay. We've been doing these live events for about a year and a half talking about failure. We've gone through all the iterations, and the last two episodes, Mark, either me or the guest has dropped out in the last two episodes. So if that happens, just refresh your browser and we'll get you back in. So it's just one of the perks of going live, but we do enjoy it, and we do thank everyone who joins us for these live events, because it's certainly a lot more fun to do them live with some engagement. And anybody who has any comments or experience they want to share, we're glad to hear that from you. So yeah. So Mark's going to be speaking at ASHRAE in Miami coming up. Is that correct?
Yeah. Next week I'll be in Miami.
Yeah.
Actually in Miami and Fort Lauderdale.
So next week you can catch Mark live in action. How many ASHRAE shows do you speak at a year? Do you know?
I am, and I need to recount. It's either 23 or 24 this ASHRAE season, which runs July to July. So
gotcha.
So that's a lot. That's the most I've ever done. So we'll see what next year looks like. But
that's right.
I did 19 the year before and 23 or 24 this year. So.
No, that's great. Well, thanks for doing that. It's important. Hey, Eric. Good morning. Eric's in Southern California. Nice. Yeah. So I love this topic. I'm so glad we're having this discussion today. And it's funny, we were commenting about like the social media and stuff, which is all new for us. We're air conditioning guys. So what do we know about doing live social media shows? But I tell you, it's, people will see it and be like, oh, that's so cool. I'm like, yeah, you didn't see the first, 40 times we completely failed at this thing, but it's just like, it's like anything else in life, right? If you want to get from point A to point B, in between, there's a bunch of pain and a bunch of failure. You gotta try some things. If you ain't trying anything, you're not moving forward. So yeah, but it's a beautiful day up here in the mountains. Was 44 degrees this morning, which is, not typical for June. So I love it. I lived in Florida my whole life, and I loved Florida for a while, and then I was ready for some change. So we moved up here a couple years ago, which has been.
And the Canadian smoke hadn't got down to you, huh?
No, it hasn't gotten down this way.
Now, last week I was in New York, and I got out just in time. It was beautiful.
Good.
So.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's I think it is heading this way, but hopefully we'll not get it too bad, Yeah. Let's see what happens. Good couple rainstorms will probably wash it all out, so. Okay, we're going to get started here in 2 minutes. And again, thank you for those of you who are joining us. We really, really appreciate it. And we've been having so much fun with this. This year, we've done many. We did more this year, I think, than we did the last 2 years combined. So we're really trying to ramp these up. So we so appreciate the support and hope you all are getting something out of it. We do have a podcast. This is what we're actually doing today, is recording a live podcast. So they're more fun to record live with people's input than it is just to do them behind the scenes. So that's why we do them live. And I think people get a little bit out of it. So that's good too. So anyway, we'll get started here in just a minute. Heather, how's it going in Charlotte?
It's going good. It's going really well. It's not quite as foggy as it was here from the fires. I'm not a meteorologist. I'm trying to figure out how the jet stream is blowing backwards to get it to us. Does that pan? I don't know.
Couldn't tell you. You got me.
A little northeaster going, huh?
Northeaster going, that's right. I see Dan's on. Hey, Dan. Dan's in Canton, right over the mountain here. So, Dan, we appreciate you joining us, as always. Dan's always here with us. We really appreciate that. These are not much fun when you go live and there's one person. So a little more fun when you have some folks. So we do appreciate you all, and we're going to get started here in a minute. Failure is the option, is the title of this. How HVAC mechanical engineers can learn from failure and innovate. Hey, Jennifer, welcome. We appreciate it. We'll get started here in just a second. Kick this things off from Tampa. I went to high school in Tampa, Gaither High School. So it is a small world, that's for sure. Okay, I'm going to stop that, and I'm going to get situated here, and I'm going to move one screen forward. And hello, Nate. Welcome. And we're going to start the official recording of the podcast, and then I'm going to kick it over to Mark here. So let's see here. Everything's situated. Okay. Hi, this is Tony Mormino with Insight Partners, and welcome to the Engineers HVAC podcast, where we work to give back to the HVAC community by sharing our HVAC application and design experience. In this live recording of episode 42, our topic is Failure is the Option, how HVAC mechanical engineers can learn from failure and innovate. This does qualify for PDH credits in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, and it may also qualify in your area. Please check. So please email me after the show, and I'll get you the certification. We'll put my email address up in the video here. If you're watching this or listening to this after the fact, my email will be in the description of the video and or podcast. So let's get started. My guest today is Mark Fly, who has over 40 years of experience as a researcher, consulting engineer, contractor, and manufacturer in the HVAC industry. He is currently the executive director of the Norm Asbjornson Innovation Center and Laboratory at AAON Incorporated in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He serves as the director of engineering for AAON for 11 years. He served as the director of engineering for AAON for 11 years. Prior to taking that position, he holds a Bachelor of Science in Engineering Physics from Missouri State University as a licensed PE in 2 states. In ASHRAE, Mr. Fly holds the grade of fellow and has been honored with the Distinguished Service and Exceptional Service Awards. So we are super glad to have Mark back. Mark, this is, I think, your 3rd or 4th show. Thank you so much for coming back today. And you have control of the slides, and I look forward to hearing about this topic.
Okay, thank you, Tony. So this is as I was telling Tony before we came on, this is one of my favorite topics. I kind of put this together really and it's geared toward young entry level engineers, but I've given it to a lot of older people too. So I always say, you can't get two engineers in a bar without telling horror stories about things that have happened to them. So that's kind of what this is all about. So, what I'm going to talk about is failure. And I kind of use the word failure to get everybody's attention. It's just really trying something new, right?
Mhm.
But many times we have to try something that doesn't work before we figure out what it does. So, and talk about the different types of failure, acceptable failure and unacceptable failure. Basically, don't give up. Keep at it. That's the most important thing. And understand how learning from others' mistakes can make us more successful. I'm almost 66 years old. I'm sure that's going to happen any minute now. But I seem to be pretty good at or having to make my own. So
I know, right? Someone's probably failed at everything we're going to try already, so we
yeah,
can look
right.
that up.
Yeah. So everybody thinks, especially young people coming out of college or entering the industry, they think there's this straight line path that they got their life planned out, and that's not the way life is. Like I said, I started out as a physicist. I was going to save the world in solar energy in 1980. It didn't work. At that time, I ended up going to work doing energy studies and end up doing some very early energy modeling. So that was not my plan at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll talk a lot about. By the time we're done, you'll know more about my career than you ever wanted to know. But like I said, it's not a straight line path, and that's okay. That's okay. That we all get to where we get as accumulation of our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So, Cambridge Dictionary defines failure as something that did not work as it should. I always like to add or expected, because we all get these expectations of how something's going to go. And one of the things that has happened to me over my lifetime for the last, 30 years, I've been the head lab rat, seems like, in every laboratory. And so when we're doing something and it really, really goes wrong, I get really excited because, damn it, we're going to learn something nobody else knows. and all the young guys look at me like I'm crazy. And,
Right.
What's wrong with you? Why are you excited? Because this didn't work like anything like we expected it to. Well, no, that's when you're really going to find something out.
Wow.
Sometimes you find out that you just did it wrong, but sometimes you find out there's something that you don't really understand, and you do learn something. So,
Right.
So that's
And like the guy who ends up figuring something new out is the guy who doesn't stop, right?
so
They just keep going.
yeah. So
Yeah.
one of the people that has written down some of the best information, I think, and of course, I read this after I figured it out, but
Right.
was Jeff Bezos, who's the founder of Amazon, and he says if the size of your failure isn't growing, then you're not innovating at a rate that can actually move the needle. And one of the things I really like about what Jeff says is he talks about the two different kinds of failure. So there's experimental failure. That's the kind you should be happy with. That's the stuff that really moves the needle. He talks about things he's been involved with called, like Fire Phone and Google Plus. Fire Phone completely passed me by. I don't even know what Fire Phone was.
I don't know it either.
It was such a flash in the pan. It never made it. I do vaguely remember Google Plus. It was going to replace Facebook. Well, that didn't work. So
no, it was a colossal failure.
It's a colossal failure.
I remember getting on there. I was working on a social media business at the time. I was trying to grow our business. Like, there's nobody on here. Where is everybody? It's just wow. So,
but there's also operational failure. Those are the kind of failures you don't want to make. So, you don't want to be really innovative when you're filling out your tax return. That usually gets you in trouble. Or if you're processing payroll for somebody, and so everybody's work has a prescriptive part that you have to do right, that has a procedure that you have to do, and then everyone has innovative part. Now, if you're in marketing and social media, you feel like you're innovative all the time, but there's certain things you have to do boring stuff that everybody has to do every day in their work. but even if you're an accountant, you can innovate on how you put your spreadsheet together or something else. So there's kind of these two parts, and you really have to look at separating those two types of failures out. So
so help me out with operational failure. That's more of like the day-to-day processes you go through.
Yeah, things that have processes. In my world, if we're building air conditioners, we want to be, we want to wire them right every time, right?
Gotcha.
That's very, very important that all the wires land in all the right places, and there's probably a procedure on where all that has to happen. Now, whether you put this component in and hook this wire up first or that wire up first is an innovative thing that you can try different ways.
Experiment. Okay, I gotcha.
So like I said, the operational failures and what happens in manufacturing. A lot of what's got a lot of press in the last few years that we'll talk about is all this quality control stuff, which tends to stifle. If you take it to the extreme, it stifles some innovation. So, from an operational standpoint for Amazon, they've built all kinds of distribution and fulfillment centers. They know how to do that. So if they mess that up, then that's an operational failure. That's where you screw up on something that you already know how to do.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So they've already got a system in place to build this building. Somebody dropped the ball because they weren't following the procedure or something.
If it's 6 months late opening, then somebody messed up. Somebody didn't do what should have been. So
I think Jeff would not be happy with that scenario.
No, probably not. And most CEOs of most large companies would, my CEO would not be happy with that.
Right. Nor should they be, right? Yeah.
Nor should they be,
Right.
But when you're developing new things, that's when you want to really innovate and do that experimental failure. That's the innovation part.
Interesting. I never thought of that. Yeah.
And a lot of people, well, how do I innovate? Well, innovation is just trying something new. And the guys that are really successful in business, the guys that I've seen successful in the business world are big risk takers. I always say in baseball, 500 is a good batting average. I can tell you that the founder of AAON, Norm, who's the guy that hired me, I'm not sure he had 500. I know where all the skeletons are buried, but he built a very successful business because he tried lots of different things. Some of them worked out, some of them worked out great. I'm sure the same is true for Amazon, Apple, any of the big corporations.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So one of the dilemmas that young people have coming into the business is, when you go to school, they give you tests and it's either right or wrong, and my wife is a academic administrator at a university, and her PhD is in assessment, so certification and assessment's really what she does all day. And, I understand that if you got to test somebody, you got to be able to answer right and wrong questions. You have to be able to judge whether this person knows what they're talking about or not.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get out in the real world, outside of academia, what you find is, there's not a right or wrong answer. There's a better answer. And a better answer is usually a matter of opinion, And, so if I come up with a better mousetrap, a better air conditioning, a better process to do something, that's my opinion. If a lot of people think that's a better way of doing it, then we'll be very successful. Right. So, but usually there's not just one way of doing it, anything. So a lot of people, especially very bright, very good students who come out of school, struggle with that. And I see that especially when they come into a laboratory environment. Like I said, I've done a lot of work in laboratory environments or in a construction environment, which every building's a laboratory, right? It's a brand new, we're trying something new.
One-off, right?
It's a one-off thing. We've never done this before. Exactly.
Exactly right.
So a lot of them struggle with that because, well, what's the right way to do this? Well, I don't know. And one of the things that I found in my career is I moved up and I had other managers working for me. One of the hardest things to do as a manager or senior manager is to let your junior managers fail.
Yeah.
And, you say, well, they're doing it wrong. You really want to jump in there and tell them how to do it right. And sometimes you find out they're not doing it wrong. Actually, what they're doing is better than what you did. But your experience says something different. So there's not just one answer. There's not just one way of doing anything.
So I have a question for you, Mark, because I've always been curious about this. So what do you do in that scenario? Like, you're the director of engineering at a business. I'm making up a fictional scenario, and you got
historical scenario.
Right. So yeah, something that happens every day, right? So you got some new guy coming out of college, and he wants to innovate and try new things, but they're not letting him do that. And it's funny because we're talking about like a little bit about social media, and I see this all the time with companies want to get online, but the folks at the top of the chain don't. Oh no, we don't need to be online. We don't need to be doing any of that when it's a great way to communicate. So what advice do you have for people who are in control, and then what do you have advice for people? Because I could see like that could stop the innovation, right? People don't want to change. You got people want to change, but then it's like the guy up top's like,
and like anything in life, there's a happy medium, right?
Right.
You can't just let people run wild. There's certain things you have to get done in a business that have to get done. That prescriptive side of stuff that you have to do. So, I mean, like I said, it's just really hard to. And I have a lot of people, well, my boss would never put up with that. I can't, if I make a mistake, he's going to fire me. Well, maybe that's not the guy you want to work for, right? Do you want to be an innovator, or do you not want to be an innovator? If you don't want to be an innovator, there's lots of places you can go to work. There's lots of especially big structured companies you can go to work that'll be happy doing that. So, but if you really want to be an innovator, you want to be, if you want to be out there doing something new, and to me, that's what makes life. I mean, that's what made my career, my work life fun, is being able to try new things. Now, but there's limits. You can't be doing new stuff every day because
right.
So yeah, there's a happy medium in that, and that's like everything. There's balance.
Good advice. I like it.
So part of this presentation, I've just got a lot of people that I'm a physicist, so I have to have Einstein in here, who said a person that never makes a mistake never tried anything new. I've got just a bunch of quotes from people I think of. This is one of my favorite. Thomas Watson Sr., CEO, really one of the founders of IBM, International Building Machines. Look at the dates, 1914 to 1956. The fastest way to succeed is to double your failure rate.
Wow.
Now, this is a company that they were incredibly innovative in the early days. Have you ever seen movies like Hidden Figures? And they talk about the IBM, to help the space program.
Right. What is this thing?
Yeah. And I can even remember when I was young and graduating college, PCs were just coming in, and it was Apple and the IBM PC. Those were brand new things.
The big fight.
We didn't have to punch cards anymore, and we didn't have to run tape, and you didn't have to put your program in, wait 3 hours for it to come out, those kind of things. That was what I grew up with early in my career. And, so Thomas Watson was an innovator, but past that, something's kind of happened to IBM. And you see that with a lot of big companies, is that they kind of lose, I'm not saying all their innovation, but they lose that drive and that innovation that makes it a company that says, hey, he's an innovator. They're not, you don't think of IBM and Apple on the same,
right.
Or IBM and Tesla on the in the same breath anymore. They're thought of as this big, stodgy, huge company. So
that's right.
So things can change over time.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jordan says, I failed over and over again in my life. That's why I succeed, and he always makes a big point. It's not, it's not accepting failure. It's not accepting, not trying. Basically, you got to keep at it. Mark Zuckerberg, the biggest risk, not taking a risk. That's the other thing I see in all these people like Norm, who started AAON, and, Sam Walton, who started Walmart, and Steve Jobs, who started Apple. These guys are all big risk takers. scares all the rest of us that work for him to death, So, because engineers in general tend to not be big risk takers, So
that's funny. You showed that picture of Jordan up there, and I watched a documentary on him. And I know as much about Jordan as the average guy knows. And I was shocked in the documentary because I see a guy like that, and I just think it's just a natural talent. Like, he just go to practice, like he would practice before practice, he would practice after practice. I mean, he was in it to win it, like, as they say. But I was just shocked in it. It just reminds me of, like, my son said something the other day. I want to be the top at this. I said, well, are you willing to get up at 4 a.m? Because you've got to compete against guys. You compete against guys who are going to work twice as long as the average person to get there. And, not everybody needs to do that. I'm not like saying you got to do that, but if you want to get to that point, you have to put in the work, right? Yeah.
That's what those guys do.
That's what they do. Right. Yeah.
So, I always said it, as an engineer, probably when I'm a conservative engineering brain set in general. I've got over most of it. Norm got me over a lot of it while I worked there. But, I needed to be 85, 90% sure before I took the leap. I always said Norm was about 31, that was.
But that sounds like a great combination, right?
Right.
Like, you got someone, if you were a Norm, there might not be an AAON right now, right? If there were two Norms, right?
Well, yeah, you got to have an accelerator and a brake, right? So. And you probably know Dave Knievel. We always used to say he was the brake on Norm.
Nice,
so back before I came along, he's been there a long time. So, So I think now I'm probably up maybe 60s. I still need to be better than half, and most of the guys. That's the reason I know that I that's why I'm not out making my own company. I know that's not my thing. I'm not going to be the guy that comes out and builds this huge company, because I'm not willing to take those kind of risks. Norm never cared. He said, I've been bankrupt 3 times in my lifetime. I don't care anymore. So
yeah, that's so funny. It's like that self-awareness thing is so, like, don't try to be that guy if it's not in your blood, right?
If it's not in your blood.
Me trying to be that guy leads to not a happy life, like, right? Because it's way too much pain, way too much stress. I'm not sleeping. I'm not happy at home.
You can't be a warrior. You got to be an action guy, right?
That's right.
So that's but that's okay. You can still get closer, right? Still be very successful.
That's right. Yeah.
So Henry Ford said the opportunity to, that failure was just the opportunity to begin again more intelligently. So, I talked a little bit about these big companies and what you find. Edward Hess at Darden School of Business has written some things about, finding large companies. What you find is that they adopt this 99% defect free. They focus on that prescriptive stuff. And I'm not saying that's bad, and not that you shouldn't do it, but you have to apply it to the right side of stuff. So he always said that's kind of like a sumo wrestler sitting on a small gymnast, which I thought was a really great quote. They just cannot accept failure. And
that goes back to the operational versus the experimental failure, right? Like, that quote looks good for operational stuff, right? But you got to still have that, that group that does the experimental failures, or you can't get anything new going, right?
So Kumar Mitra from Forbes basically takes that a little bit farther and talks about, a lot of corporations kind of throw away that failure. If you punish the people when they fail, or, severely, or you fire people from failure, you've thrown away that failure, that learning experience, you've squashed that. So what you find is these corporations, when they get so big, they quit innovating, and to get innovation in their company, they go out and do it by acquisition. They have to buy innovative companies. So I can remember back when Windows first came out of Microsoft. I was a Microsoft Windows beta tester. That was my risk-taking part, right? So Windows was sitting on top of DOS. We were typing in screens with menus, and Windows came out, and at the same time, all these little companies, one of the things that made IBM and Microsoft really own the PC market was they had kind of an open architecture. Apple wouldn't let you write applications for it without them vetting them for perfect quality control. Microsoft, anybody could do anything with, and of course, some of the quality of it wasn't so good, but you had a lot of innovation, right? And what you'd find is all these little companies pop up and they'd have some little app, like you get on your phone, this app for, $5, you can go do this. It'll change how Windows worked or something. And then about a year later, Microsoft would buy that company and it'd become a new feature, right? So part of the way they started innovating was doing what he's talking about. They buy their innovation and move into that. So Google is a very interesting company, and I've had some personal involvement with this. And I think they've rebranded this a little bit, but they used to have a division called Google X. Their logo was a pirate ship. And so what Google does as part of their corporate culture is they take a certain amount of their income or their profits, and they invest it in this Google X or this innovation division. And it's just, and employees can come, there's kind of a little competition, you can get bonuses and stuff, to bring any crazy ideas. So I was involved in, and I'm not going to say who it was, but I was involved in a division where we were a sub-supplier for one of these Google X companies making it was a residential air conditioner division. So, and so Google brought it on. They used the full force of Google, the full analytics, all their business people. They as an incubator, they helped do proof of concept. They helped fund prototypes. They got the thing up and running. Once they proved that it was a viable business, then they sent out a survey, and they said, basically, all you consumers, how do you feel about owning a Google air conditioner? And, basically the general comments was, well, I've already got, Alexa or whatever else, they're listening to me. And, every time I get on Facebook or get on Amazon and buy something, 24 ads pop up on Facebook for that thing I just talked about. I feel like I'm being watched too much. I do not want my air conditioner listening to me in the bedroom. Right? So they split that division off and created a new company, sold up basically, did an ESOP buyout by the founders, and they split it off. Other things they've been brought into Google and brought as part of their group, but that's part of their culture. So I just think that's a very interesting way to approach things. AAON does a lot of that too. We spend more than any other company as percent of revenue on R&D. In that big innovation center that we just that we built in 19. So, putting money back into that innovation is very important if you want to be the innovator. So, so companies really don't fail, people do, but companies can gain from that. So my philosophy as I went through my career, especially as I started to have managers report to me, was you break it, you fix it. And my favorite one is hiring people. That's one of the hardest things for a manager to do when you gotta go out, and especially the first few times. I've had them create tests and give people tests, and kids out of school. And I always say, if you got through engineering school, HVAC is not that hard. The math is not that hard. I haven't used my partial differential equations in a while, right?
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness, because I forgot all about them. So, so if you make it through school, you can probably do it. I always look at people, so I have 8 managers, and they'll ask me to come in and help them interview somebody. And I'm saying, what's your senior project? Well, in your senior project in school, what did you do? Were you the documenter? Were you the presenter? Were you the builder? And I'm talking to people trying to get their personality, see if they're going to fit in our team. That's more important to me than whether they were a 4.0 student.
Right.
Got up every morning and did partial differential equations to get awake. So
that wasn't me either.
That wasn't me either. But I had some friends that did that actually. So 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 like I said, you got to let your people make mistakes. And so a lot of times, people will hire somebody. And I say, I don't know, but you go ahead and hire them. I'm fine with you hiring them. I'm fine with you working with them. But when the point comes that you figure out they're not going to work, you got to get rid of them.
Gotcha.
And the only time I'm going to come down on you if you wait too long to do that, because that's not good for them and that's not good for us. It doesn't mean that person is a bad person. It just means that person doesn't fit in our company. And there's probably a place out there in the world that they fit perfect, so, so you're not doing them a service by keeping them around, and you're not doing us a service by having an employee that's not going to work out for us. So,
exactly.
So those are very important, like I said, it's really important that you fix your own mistakes.
So if you can take the risk, but you have to kind of own the consequences.
You have to kind of thing. The consequences. I'm going to back up to that. There's something else I always like to tell young people as I come in. If I had a few pieces of philosophical advice to give you, number one, never let your boss find out from somebody else you made a mistake. That's I've learned that the hard way by doing it, and that never comes out good.
And they always seem to find out, don't they?
They always seem to find out. If it's a minor thing, that doesn't mean you have to go to your boss and I made a math error.
Right.
But I fixed it. No, that's not. It's But when those big mistakes that are going to get up to the front, you want to be the first person to go in and talk to them. The second part of that is come with a plan to fix it. It doesn't have to be a good plan. Because one of two things typically will happen if you're working for the right guy. Number one, he's going to say, that's a great plan. And you're going to get some cred because you came in with the plan to fix it. And, in the sales business, I go around and talk to a lot of reps, and I've had this discussion many times. If you've sold a piece of equipment or worked on a job or been a contractor on a job and things really went bad, but you were the guy that stuck with it and fixed it.
Yep.
You probably build a better relationship with all your customers from that than you did if that'd been a perfect job.
100%. 100%.
So, so if you can stick with it and fix it, that's the most important thing. So if you come with your boss and he comes a great plan, he's going to get cred. If it's a really terrible plan or a really stupid plan, then he becomes a mentor. Oh no, you shouldn't do that. Think about doing this. And then you get this mentor relationship with your supervisor or your boss. So, if you're working for the right guy, that's going to work. If he fires you off the bat, that's probably not the guy you want to work for anyway.
That's not the good place you want to be anyway.
That's not the place you're going to be. And a lot of people have trouble with that. But, I always feel like, life works out. We all end up where we need to be for a reason. And, and all the things that I thought terrible happened to me in my lifetime all came out for the best I could tell. So
we know it's so funny when you're going through it, you're like, this is the worst thing ever. And then a year later you look back like, wow, I'm glad that happened. Now look,
I'm glad that happened. Right.
The same thing with so many things. And I love that whole, when I first started in the industry, I was working for Trane and I was calling on a very large mechanical contractor in Jacksonville. And there was a senior guy there I had this project with who I was nervous about. And it went south. It did not go well. Can't remember what the issue was, but we've all been there, right? So I remember showing up every day, and I was at his office. I was going out to the job site, and I was like, "Man, I'm so sorry." And he looked at me. He's like, "Look, Tony, anybody could be here and do a great job when things are going well. You're here. You're trying to take care of it." I said, "That's great. That's like the best you can, And we had a great relationship after that because he knew no matter what was happening, I was going to be there. So
right,
yeah.
So Thomas Edison's, obviously he was talking about the light bulb. I haven't failed. I found 10,000 ways that don't work. And our current CEO, Gary Fields, this is his philosophy. He's never had a failure. I've known him my whole life. So yeah, not everything he's done's worked out perfect. I can tell you that.
Yeah, right.
But a lot of people, this is one way to kind of deal with that. You don't have to call it a failure, but what Thomas Edison said, many of life failures are experienced by people who just didn't realize how close they were to success when they gave up. So it's just that keep after it, keep working it, keep solving the problem until you get a satisfactory solution for everybody.
I'm glad he kept going. I like having lights.
I do. One of my favorite historical figures is Winston Churchill, and he had a couple. Of course, he was very poetic in his writing. Success is not final, failure is not failure. It's the courage to continue that counts. Success is going from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm. So if you look at Winston Churchill's career, he did one thing. He led Great Britain to winning World War II. Before that and after that, his political career was a train wreck. It was a total train wreck,
It's so true.
After World War II, they fired him. They brought him back as prime minister, then immediately fired him again. So, there's a line. There's a Winston Churchill movie that me and my wife like to watch a lot, and and there's one line in it. I don't know if it's whether this is artistic license by the screenwriter or not, but he has 100 ideas a day. 98 of them are downright dangerous. 2 of them are good. So a lot of people are like that, but those 2 good ones can make the difference, right?
So true.
Losers quit when they fail. Winners fail until they succeed. So, T. Boone Pickens. I'm from Oklahoma. I have to talk about T. Boone. One of the things, and this is really something that I had to learn over and over again, as engineers, we get analysis paralysis. We like to be that 98% sure before we pull the trigger. And T. Boone calls that the ready, aim, fire, syndrome.
Who's that? Who says that?
T. Boone Pickens.
T. Boone.
So
I've been guilty of that. Yep.
Yeah, we've all been guilty of that. But a lot of the guys like Norm and Steve Jobs, they didn't have that problem. They just jumped right into it. And so, the willingness to make those decisions and the willingness to take those risks. And what you find out as you get older is that, the terrible things you think are happening are going to happen because I made a mistake here, usually are more terrible in your head than they are in reality.
Oh my gosh.
You can usually fix it. Sometimes you just have to, and you can always back up and do it again in every case. So,
yep.
So I'm going to talk about some famous failures. So there's some famous failures in history. So William and John Kellogg's. John was a doctor, and his brother William. They were basically running this nursing home, and they were boiling grain because the elderly patients in this nursing home couldn't chew solid food. Mm-hmm. And one day they basically weren't paying attention, and the boiled corn meal burnt in the bottom of the pan, and it got all flaky. And 99% of us would scrape that stuff out and start over again. Hey, I screwed this up. And they start playing with it and said, hey, this is kind of cool. And that's how cornflakes came. The very first packaged breakfast cereal was from a mistake of burning something on the stove.
Oh my gosh!
By a couple of guys.
It's crazy.
Walt Disney was fired at the age of 22 from his job in a newspaper because he lacked imagination and had no good ideas. And then he went to California, drew a picture of a mouse, and the rest is history, right?
Oh my gosh. Lacked imagination. That's perfect.
Yeah. So the Wright brothers, who were a bunch of bicycle builders and bicycle mechanics, wanted to make this flying machine. Success for them was 10 seconds off the ground. I think when I was a kid, I could jump my bicycle on a dirt ramp for 10 seconds. But they kept at it, and basically the whole aviation industry grew out of that. These bicycle mechanics trying to figure out how to get an airplane up into 10 seconds. This is one of my favorites. Bubble wrap in the 1960s was developed to be this really cool psychedelic wallpaper.
What?
That nobody thought was a good idea.
Oh my gosh.
So maybe if you had a bad acid trip, you were bouncing off the walls or something. I don't know. But it wasn't until IBM, who had just introduced the personal computer, and the post office and UPS was destroying these things, getting them shipped out, but started wrapping their computers in wallpaper for shipment.
Oh my gosh!
Did they come up with the idea that that's what bubble wrap would be good for? So
It was going to be wallpaper?
It was going to be wallpaper. And then they thought it'd
like...
be house insulation. Actually, you can I go to my local Lowe's store and you can buy bubble wrap with foil face on both sides. I hung some in my attic, made my attic a whole lot cooler.
It's funny. We traveled in our RV for a year. We took like a year off and went on vacation, stuff like that. And RVs in the cold have an enormous problem with the internal dew points higher. I mean, there's not a lot of insulation on the windows, right? It's a single pane window. So if it's 20 degrees outside, they're sweating all the time. So a lot of people just take bubble wrap and would
put bubble wrap over the windows, right?
Yeah. Put it on the windows. A great insulator. So.
Great insulator. So, WD-40 came out of the avionics industry, aircraft manufacturing. WD stands for water displacement. So they were looking for something that would displace water, and basically they could put on newly machined parts so that they wouldn't corrode and rust, flash rust, degreaser, protector, water displacement. And so it's WD-40 because WD-39 didn't quite work. And so, so they come up with this solution that they're going to use in this industrial process, and they find out that all of their employees are putting it in mason jars, taking it home, putting it on their hinges. And so they decided to package it up, put it in spray can, and that's where WD-40 came from.
That is so funny.
James Dyson, Dyson vacuum cleaners. Mm-hmm. And you can tell this guy was an engineer because he had
look at that.
5,271 prototypes, not to 5,275, 71, right?
Right.
That worked. And then he went to every manufacturer in the US and Europe trying to sell his brand new idea on a vacuum cleaner motor and
oh my gosh,
pump, and couldn't get it done. And so he had to innovate his own manufacturing company because he couldn't get anybody interested in it.
I'm tired just seeing that number, 5,271.
Yeah. So that's persistent. So
yeah.
So you can't see it for the barcode. So there we go.
There we go.
1748, James Cullen, who was a Scottish physician, basically discovered that if you put diethyl ether in a vacuum jar and basically evaporate it out under a vacuum, that the jar got cold, little frost formed on the outside of it. Cool. Wrote a paper on it. That's cool. So basically invented vapor compression. Refrigeration at this point. The basic concept behind this. 1748 became an academic paper. Nothing happened, right? 100 years later, John Gorey is this Florida doctor and actually a really good friend of Thomas Edison. Because if you go over his hospital and Edison's summer home is like Fort Myers-ish, somewhere around. You said you grew up around there. You probably know where that is. They were right next to each other. So
wow.
So he discovers he's fighting the yellow fever epidemic. He discovers that his patients do better in the wintertime than they do in the summertime when it's hot and humid. So he figures that if he could figure out some way to air condition his hospital, his patients would do better. So he took what had been done 100 years ago, basically, and created a machine to make ice and blew air across these blocks of ice.
Just use a fan over the blocks of ice?
Just a fan over a block's ice because there was no such thing as a fin tube coil. And so he went in 1848, he went to patent his invention. In 1848, there was this huge industry called the ice industry, where they were cutting ice out of the Great Lakes or importing it or cutting up icebergs. Your great grandparents, or if you're old like me, maybe your grandparents remember the Iceman would come around a couple of times a week, and they had an ice box, which was this little 2-compartment insulated cabinet. And they shoved this block of ice in the bottom, and then you put your food in the top, and the ice is what kept that food cold. So this is a huge industry, especially in the South where there wasn't really, there was no good way to keep your food from spoiling. And, they'd haul this ice down there. And so they basically blocked Gorey from getting a patent on this. So he never got his ice machine patented. So fast forward a few to 1901, Willis Carrier, who I always consider Gory the father of air conditioning, but that's because I would never work for Carrier, right? Willis Carrier, who everybody says is the father of air conditioning,
I had that same conversation with someone about a month ago. It's funny.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So Willis Carrier is hired by a lithographic printing company, not to air condition their building, but to help them solve their paper sticking together on the printing press in the summertime in New York. So basically, he comes up, well, I know if I cool the air out, I can take the humidity out, basic psychometric processes. So that was the beginning of him putting together this air conditioning in a commercial unit. And then Willis Carrier, in the early days of air conditioning, he didn't build air conditioning units. He sold compressors and coils, and everything was built up systems. Engineers typically were the contractors and the installers. So you'd hire somebody and they'd come in and put cold air in your building, right?
Wow.
So, and he was a component manufacturer. Matter of fact, one of the companies I worked for, before I worked for AAON, patented a rooftop unit in 1943, and their patent wasn't on, it was an vac cooled rooftop unit. The patent wasn't on a vac cooling, it was on a rooftop unit. They actually had the original patent on the rooftop unit because they bought all these components from Willis Carrier and put them together in a box and prepackaged it, put it on a truck.
No kidding. What year was that?
That was 1943.
Wow.
So
interesting.
So Governair was the company that did that. Was part of the Nortec companies. I don't even think that name survives anymore. But I engineered for them for about 17 years.
Wow.
So
it's funny.
So so if we kind of look at my career, like I said, this is my road to success, if you can call me successful. But I started out as I was going to be a physicist. I was going to save the world in solar energy, but I was working my way through school and decided I was actually accepted into grad school, but I didn't end up going because I got married at that point and we were tired of eating peanut butter because we didn't have any money.
Yep.
And so I got this job with a consulting engineering firm, originally doing energy studies. And of course, I brought the first computers into the company and wrote energy modeling on a Radio Shack TRS-80 that we built ourselves.
Oh my gosh.
And then when that kind of that was the basically the energy crisis after the Arab oil embargo in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when Jimmy Carter was in office. Basically, when the Arabs turned the oil back on, the whole energy crisis went away. All the rebates, all the energy studies went away. We went back to wasting energy again and putting carbon in the atmosphere because it didn't matter anymore. And so I went off and learned how to do regular mechanical design and kind of became an accidental mechanical HVAC engineer, working for a consulting company. And then in '83, there was a little recession. The engineering firm I was working for, I was in Springfield, Missouri. That's a picture. And I ended up moving to a contractor, and I was the design build guy at that point. I was getting close to getting my PE license, eventually got my PE license and started doing design build work for a contractor down in Arkansas. And mostly what we did was came over to Tulsa, Oklahoma and raided all the union work because we were a non-union contractor. So, there are 3 malls in Tulsa, Oklahoma that I had one of them I know I had my stamp on, maybe 2. And so I designed three of the malls that are in Tulsa back then,
wow,
in the 80s. And then we kind of got delusions of grandeur and decided that we could manufacture. We had this new idea for this cold air system, which was basically if I could put 40-degree air down a duct, I could reduce the ductwork size and the fan size.
Yeah.
instead of 55-degree air. And really what that came out of we had a sister company in Springfield, Missouri, and they had got this big job, design build, for this big hotel, multi-story hotel. And after they got the job, they figured out they didn't have enough room to get ductwork.
Oh my gosh.
So this was a invention of necessity.
Right.
And so this is on the right-hand side of this picture is me at the age of, in my mid-20s.
Looking sharp.
Looking skinny, dark hair. And the guy on the left is Gary Fields Sr., who is the father of my current CEO of AAON.
Oh my gosh.
And actually,
that's crazy.
Slightly before this, Gary Fields, well, actually it was William Gary Fields. So my current CEO would get really mad if you called him Gary Fields Jr. because he's really not a junior. Because Gary was his father's middle name. They always went by Gary.
Gotcha.
Anyway, that was his father, and the current CEO, Gary Fields, who's the CEO of AAON, actually made his first sales call on me in 1981 when his first job as a salesman. He's a couple of years younger than me. So, it's a very little industry. I always say there's only 24 of us. We all know each other.
It feels that way, doesn't it?
It feels that way. So,
sure does.
If you stay in the HVAC industry for very long, I mean, I went to New York and went out to dinner. Me and my wife went out to dinner with a longtime rep friend of mine, and a friend of his came in, and before the evening was out, we discovered a dozen people that we had known or knew common with this other friend that I had no connection with. So it's an interesting industry. So
wow.
So we started building these cold air machines, and then in the mid 80s. 3 Mile Island, basically in 83, 3 Mile Island happened, and all the nuclear plants got turned off. And now we had a electrical generation capacity issue, which we're coming up on facing again now that we're going to go all electric, which is one of your other presentations you've been talking about.
Yeah.
And so in California and in Florida and certain places, they didn't have enough generation capacity, and demand charges got really high. And so thermal storage for demand limiting in buildings, basically build ice all night, cool the building during the day, so to offset to level out the load on the power plants, became really big. And since we were putting out 40-degree air, 35-degree water really wouldn't make 40-degree air very efficiently. So we had to come up with an ice machine that made ice colder than 32 degrees, which means you freeze it out of glycol.
Yep.
And so we got into the ice machine business, and that business, I was the first employee. There were 5 partners. Gary's dad was one of them, a few other guys involved in that. And so I'm about 27, 28 years old. I have a 3-year daughter. I just bought a house. I'm paying 18.5% variable rate interest rate. Thank you, Jimmy Carter. And I get this phone call, and I'm kind of, and the business is kind of, Reagan has come into office. He's deregulated the utility industry, and that meant that now people in California and Florida can buy power from Kansas, or wherever. And so all that utility shortage went away, and so the ice machine business dies. So we're in trouble. We got a big part of our business was ice machines. And I get a call, and several of the partners have left the company. And I'm 27 years old, 27, 28 years old. I'm running the Arkansas manufacturing plant. The other partners are somewhere else. I'm the chief engineer, payroll clerk, general manager, chief production guy. We had a little company of about 20 people. And I get a call from our attorney saying, "Hey, Mark, I need you to sign something this afternoon." I said, "I'm not an officer. What do you want me to sign?" "Oh, didn't Paul tell you?" Who was the president of the company? "You're treasurer of the corporation now. Takes 3 people to have a class 3 corporation, and we need we need you to sign the chapter 11 papers." So,
Oh,
there's one of those terrible
gosh.
days, right? I think,
Right.
so first thing I do that,
It's all
is,
over,
is
right?
find myself my own lawyer and say, am I going to lose my house? Is my daughter, are we going to be living on the street? Turns out it's incorporated, no personal liability, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I figured that out, and then I go to work for somebody else shortly thereafter because the company goes
Right.
bankrupt. But those are all life. That was a terrible time, but man, did I learn a lot. I learned about
Right.
corporations and being lawyers and taking risks and
Yep, for sure.
not to invest anything supported by the government. So
Yeah.
or utility companies, and so I went to work for a custom HVAC manufacturer for a few years. Went and finally decided I did, that they were too stupid to work for. I went to work for AAON. My first job at AAON, after I'd been there 3 months, we have a division in Canada that's not working out very well. Because you go up there for, you're already driving. I was living in Oklahoma City. You're driving up to Tulsa every Monday, spending the week in a hotel, driving back on Saturday because my wife's a teacher and she can't move for 9 months. And says, well, Norm comes to me and says, what difference does it make if you get on a plane or get in a car? So I guess it doesn't matter. So I fly up to Toronto, Canada for these 3 months and play the role. We fire the general manager who's doing a terrible job. And I'm the interim general manager of this custom air handling company up there that's really in bad shape.
I remember. Yeah.
If you're around at that time, you probably remember that. And so that 3 months turned into 2 years. I was commuting to Canada for 2 years. My wife was really not very happy with me about that.
Sure, yeah.
But I was in it. I couldn't stop, right? I need to finish. And we eventually closed that plant down. And I went up there in 2007. We closed it down in 2009 after I finally convinced Norm that this was one of those failures that really wasn't going to ever work. So time just wasn't right, and we weren't the right company at that time to do that. So, but I also learned I didn't want to be the top guy in a manufacturer. I didn't want a Norm's job anymore.
Right.
I learned a lot of things about myself and what I could do and what I was good at. There's lots of things I could do, but a lot of things I don't enjoy doing. So you need to find things you enjoy doing. They'll be a lot more fun. And you'll be better at them because you're always better at what you enjoy doing. So
absolutely.
So now, I'm I got the opportunity to build a $50 million lab for AAON as my kind of pre-retirement job. And once I got that done, I'm kind of a professional ASHRAE distinguished lecturer fellow. You don't travel 24 weeks a year and run anything at AAON. I mostly travel. But I get to go out and talk to people like you and talk to ASHRAE chapters. And so a lot of people, I have a lot of people, a lot of my friends come up and say, hey, if you ever retire, let me know because I want your job. So I just get paid to go around the country and talk to people, right?
It's like a dream job.
It's like a dream job for me. So, I've got my distinguished service and exceptional service from ASHRAE. I obviously can't say no to jobs.
Right.
At ASHRAE, I'm a fellow. I'm a distinguished lecturer. So I think I've achieved everything way more than I ever thought I would amount to.
And all that you learn through all these different examples. Thanks for sharing this, by the way. This is really cool to see it all written down like that. And everything you learn at every step, it all came together in what you do today.
And many of those things you think back, those were really miserable at the time, but then you think back, say, wow, that was cool. I did this,
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you like to go hiking or go on adventure trips or mountain climbing, you're doing it. You're halfway through. You're saying, "Oh my God, I wish. What were we thinking about getting into this place? We're going to die on this mountain or whatever."
Right.
And then you come back the next weekend. What are we going to do it again? That was great fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that sense of accomplishment,
and it's like this.
Get that from suffering, right?
You get it from suffering. It's like this could be anybody's like track in a different, like, for example, like I saw one about Abraham Lincoln, like before he became a president, he failed at this, he failed at that, he did this and went bankrupt, he does, so it's the same, like, it doesn't even matter the job, right? It's just a process of becoming into the successful area. So I love it.
So I see a guy on chat said he started his career as an inside sales guy for Gary Field Senior. So, so like I said, incredibly small world.
Yeah, he's right. You know how small it is? He's right next to me in this office next to me.
Right, I know. I met him. So,
oh, that's right. Yeah, you were here. That's right.
I was here.
Awesome.
So, that's so so at this point, when I'm talking in front of a live audience, usually I try to get people, and it's really interesting if you're in front of a student group, they won't say anything because they don't want to talk about their failures. Every once in a while you can get one to talk to, but so I always try to bring some old guys in because we've all had things. I could tell you stories about ice machines and hiring scuba divers to dive into 13% glycol solutions in Scottsdale, Arizona when it's 20 degrees, 120 outside, to cut things out of the bottom of an ice tank, so everybody has these big disaster jobs that you've done that are fun stories to tell. So,
I love hearing about them because it makes me feel like I'm not alone.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
we all have them.
We all have them.
Right.
And you learn a lot of things from them. And usually
Absolutely.
You learn stuff you didn't start out to learn. You learn new things that you didn't think about. It's something that comes in sideways from you.
Yeah, I know with our journey doing our online efforts at Insight, we've had hundreds of scenarios where let's go this way and then we go that way and it doesn't work. We got to refresh and do it. And, some people see, oh, the stuff you're doing looks good. You're doing. I'm like, yeah, you didn't see the first 400 failures, not 400, but the first 100 failures where it was terrible.
Right.
We learned something every show. Last show, we learned about 2 or 3 things, and Heather wrote them down, and we try to do them better each time. But that's just how it works. So. Good stuff.
So
awesome. Well, if anybody's got any questions, throw them in the chat here. But Mark, I really, I've been wanting to do this or listen to your presentation for a long time because I think it's so important. And, especially as we move into this new era in air conditioning where a lot of the decisions aren't made really by the engineering community and they don't seem to make a lot of sense to a lot of us. And I think innovation is extremely, extremely important. And, from my viewpoint of the whole thing, like I'm starting to finally learn at the age 52 that failure is part of the process. Like I used to get all upset when we would do something and it wouldn't work the way I want. I'm like, okay, it's just, we're not.
Many of us that gravitate to engineering and technical professions, we're math minded. We like math, we're conservative a lot, we're not big risk takers and we're worriers, right? We worry about things. And we want to be successful, but as you get older, you get mellower, right?
That's right.
You say, hey, the world did not come this. I had all these things happen to me in my life, and the world did not come to the end. Matter of fact, look what happened.
Yep, for sure. And such a great reminder. And thanks, Josh, for the comment. Josh, we had a couple comments that you did a great job, Mark. So as always,
all right.
We greatly appreciate it. And let's see, anything else we want to touch on? Or we're going to, if you're listening, by the way, before we close it down, there's my email is here, tmormino@insightUSA.com. Email me for PDH credits. You could also zap this. I'm going to turn this off for a second to we'll make the QR codes a little bit bigger here in a second and we'll close it out. We'll run that for about a minute. So if you want to zap the podcast or the Engineers HVAC podcast, you can come listen to this there at any time. And you could also watch it on our YouTube channel, HVAC Insight Partners HVAC TV. And great. Any closing words there, Mark?
No, I was talking. I didn't look at the chat. So I see a number of people that I know. Jennifer down in Tampa. So Jennifer Eisenbeck, see her in a few weeks when we all come to Tampa for the summer ASHRAE meeting.
Oh, nice.
So
it's a small world, like we said.
It is a very small world, and as Tony knows, and a lot of anybody who hadn't been in this business for a long time, I have good friends that I've known for 40 years that I see twice a year at ASHRAE meetings or something, and you run into these people over and over again, And then you start talking to them, and I always say there's only 1 degree of separation in the HVAC industry.
Oh my gosh!
If you don't know somebody, you know somebody that knows them. I guarantee
So
it.
true. Amen to that. So be careful what you say and don't burn any bridges.
Careful what you say and don't burn any bridges. You may end up working for the guy that was your salesman, someday.
Yeah, that's true. Amen to that. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mark. We'll close it on that. If you could stick around for a moment, and thank you all so much for watching. We appreciate you. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.